Major funding for KPBS Evening Edition has been made possible in part by Bill Howe Family of Companies, providing San Diego with plumbing, heating, and air restoration, flood and remodeling services for over 40 years. Call 1-800-BILL-HOWE or visit billhowe.com. And by the Conrad Trebas Foundation, Darlene Marcos Shiley, and by the following. And by viewers like you. Thank you.
Hundreds of people could end up on the street by the end of the year, but tonight there is a new plan to address San Diego's looming shelter shortage. Thanks for joining us. I'm Maya Trabulsi. Today, city leaders announced hundreds of new shelter beds will open in December. KPBS reporter Katie Anastas says it comes as 2 large facilities are set to close.
The city's shelter system will lose more than 600 beds when shelters at Golden Hall and the Paul Mirabal Center close. City leaders have been looking for ways to keep those shelters' clients from ending up on the street. Today, they announced that Veterans Village will have 165 new shelter beds by December 1st. Some will be for single men and seniors, others will be for veterans.
The primary focus will be on equipping veterans with the tools that they need, not just to transition into permanent housing, but to actually thrive once they find their forever home.
The San Diego Rescue Mission is adding 37 more beds to its shelter in National City. Mayor Todd Gloria says the city and county are working together to provide 56 beds for people with alcohol use disorder.
So, like, for example, the county's serial inebriate program is a transitional housing intervention that has never been fully utilized. Roughly half the time it's occupied, the other half it's not. That's not acceptable. Any taxpayer-funded resource that's out there should be used as much as possible.
The city is also negotiating a plan to convert a motel into a non-congregate shelter with 105 beds. If it happens, that would bring the total number of new indoor beds to 363. The city says clients at Golden Hall will be given priority for the new shelter beds, and that dozens of them plan to move to the city's safe sleeping program. Last week, the city announced it would add 235 two-person tents to that program. Gloria says lease negotiations for the proposed 1,000-bed Kettner and Vine shelter are still ongoing. Katie Anastas, KPBS News.
A new state law aims to create more affordable homes by allowing owners to sell their excess land, but some are having a hard time navigating the new law. Coming up, we show you how a new company is helping families capitalize.
Tonight, we do have a little bit of extra moisture around and could be even experiencing a couple sprinkles in some locations as we head through the night. I'll talk more on your full forecast and what the days to come look like ahead.
San Diego County had its first 2 locally acquired cases of dengue fever this month. That is a mosquito-borne disease. KPBS SciTech reporter Thomas Fudge has more on where the cases cropped up.
Dengue fever is not unknown in San Diego County, but the cases we have seen were always in people who traveled to other countries, caught the fever, then brought it home. This month, that changed.
So recently, these 2 cases did not report any travel before they were in the 2 weeks before they were diagnosed with dengue.
Those 2 cases, both from this month, appeared in Vista and Escondido, and they were locally acquired from local mosquitoes. Dengue is carried by the Aedes aegypti mosquito, a native of Africa that has been here for about a decade. Unfortunately, they really like the taste of humans.
They love to bite people. They prefer to live in kind of human inhabited areas. So they can often be found breeding in backyards and even super tiny containers of water.
If you contract dengue, you may not develop symptoms, but if you do, Dr. Beatty says it will feel like a bad case of the flu. Headaches, nausea, fatigue, and what can be very severe bone pain.
If it progresses, it could progress to dengue hemorrhagic fever, which can have bleeding associated with it and could create a shocky syndrome. And some people can ultimately die if they don't get supportive care.
Right now, dengue fever in San Diego is new and still quite rare. Bray says they have already applied insecticide in the areas where this month's locally acquired cases appeared.
You know, what we don't want to see is dengue really becoming established here. So while we have had some local cases of transmission, we do still believe it's very rare here, very unlikely for most people to experience dengue here in San Diego County. And we would really like to keep it that way.
Dengue is becoming more common throughout the world, Beatty says, and San Diego has seen about 50 cases of travel-related dengue. You cannot get dengue fever directly from another infected person, only from the mosquito that has bitten them. Thomas Fudge, KPBS News.
Pulmonary infections happen when a virus, bacteria, or fungus invade the lungs, causing inflammation. And the CDC says these illnesses are making more children sick this fall. Mandy Gaither has a look at the latest data and how to help slow the spread.
In parts of the U.S., RSV is on the rise, especially in young children. Cases of pertussis are 5 times higher than they were at this time last year. And now an alert from the U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention about a surge in cases of walking pneumonia, particularly among preschool-aged children.
This wave began a little earlier and is much, much higher than what we expect from previous years.
Dr. Frank Esper with Cleveland Clinic Children says symptoms of this milder lung infection can last for weeks and may include a cough, low fever, and muscle aches.
It's typically caused by several different types of bacteria, but the most common one is called mycoplasma. And this is an old friend with pediatricians and adult physicians alike.
Esper says penicillin and amoxicillin, the antibiotics typically used to treat pneumonia, don't seem to work with walking pneumonia. So a different antibiotic regimen may be needed instead.
That antibiotic most commonly is azithromycin, also known as a Z-Pak by many people out in the community. And that actually does treat walking pneumonia very well.
Esper says those who are sick can help slow the spread of any illness by covering coughs and sneezes, by washing hands, and by staying home if you're sick.
Chicken soup yourself back up to good health and then go out afterwards.
For Health Minute, I'm Mandy Gaither.
And Dr. Esper says there are diagnostic tests to determine whether a patient has walking pneumonia, but he says they are expensive and the patient typically has to foot the bill. So most of the time, those tests are saved for people who are really sick. The Coast Guard recently relieved 2 senior leaders in San Diego. KPBS military and veterans reporter Andrew Dyer says it could be some time before the reason is made public.
The commander and senior enlisted leader of Coast Guard Sector San Diego were removed from their jobs Friday. According to the Coast Guard, Captain James Spittler and Master Chief Michael Diaquino were relieved due to a loss in confidence in the leaders following an investigation. Loss of confidence is often the only explanation offered by the military when leaders are removed and can mean anything. A Coast Guard spokesperson declined Monday to provide KPBS a copy of the investigation because it's not complete. There's more than 900 Coast Guardsmen stationed in San Diego, where they do everything from search and rescue and law enforcement to marine safety inspections. KPBS will have more once the investigation is released to the public, which could take months. Andrew Dyer, KPBS News.
The presidential candidates remain locked in a tight race. Vice President Kamala Harris is leaning into her messaging on abortion rights and contrasting her character with opponents. Meanwhile, former President Donald Trump is hammering the Democratic nominee on immigration and the economy. Julia Benbrook has the latest on the race.
Vice President Kamala Harris and former President Donald Trump are in a neck-and-neck race, both of them putting an emphasis on those key battleground states in this final week and leaning into the issues where they believe they have an advantage with voters.
The president candidates entered the last full week of the election locked in one of the closest races in recent history.
Make no mistake, we will win.
We're not going to take it anymore.
Vice President Kamala Harris has big names joining her on the campaign trail in the final stretch.
Because by every measure, She has demonstrated that she's ready.
Harris emphasizing issues where polls show she has an advantage: abortion rights and preserving democracy. Her marquee event, an address Tuesday in Washington at the site of former President Donald Trump's January 6, 2021 rally that took place prior to the violent attack on the U.S. Capitol.
He is focused and actually fixated on his grievances, on himself, and on dividing our country.
The former president hosted a massive event in Madison Square Garden over the weekend, billed as the launch of the final stage of his candidacy, spotlighting issues that voters favor him on, including the economy and immigration.
The day I take the oath of office, the migrant invasion of our country ends and the restoration of our country begins.
His message overshadowed by the remarks of Trump loyalists who spoke before him, including comedian Tony Hinchcliffe, who referred to Puerto Rico as, quote, a floating island of garbage. The Trump team released a statement saying the joke does not reflect the views of Trump or the campaign.
The comedian's comments sparked immediate backlash and come as Trump and Harris are vying for the Puerto Rican vote, particularly in the key battleground state of Pennsylvania, where about 500,000 Puerto Ricans live. Following the comments at that Trump rally, Puerto Rican superstar Bad Bunny, who has more than 45 million followers on Instagram, signaled his support for Harris. Reporting at the White House, I'm Julia Benbrook.
And we want to let you know about our plans for election night. KPBS will have special coverage of the local results, and that starts at 10 o'clock on television and also streaming online. We will also have updates throughout the night on KPBS FM 89.5. And as we inch closer to Election Day, you may be feeling a little bit stressed out. Campaigns and ads bombarding you with messages of how consequential the election is. That weight can take a toll. Here's Brian Abel with some tips from experts on how to cope.
The consequences of him ever being president again are brutally serious.
If Kamala gets 4 more years, she will obliterate our economy.
With messages like those feeding the notion that the 2024 presidential election is the most consequential in American history, it can be easy to feel stressed.
And being exposed to so many news that are not always positive or happy or encouraging leads to more sense of distress.
There are ways to manage the anxiety. Mental health experts suggest limiting time exposed to stressful content, like doom scrolling on social media, and do things that are good for your mind, body, and spirit.
Self-care routines that we all have or should have. That include physical activation, engaging in activities that are pleasurable, making sure that the discussions that we have with friends or family members are not necessarily around the topics that are currently stressful.
And if you find yourself frustrated by a friend, family member, or coworker with different political views, UCLA's Dr. Emmanuel Maidenberg says it's important to remember people are more than just their political beliefs.
Recognizing that opinions, including political opinions, are based in our personal life experiences. Thinking about it that way allows for some compassion to understand that the other person may have different view or different interpretation of some of the things that happen.
In Washington, Brian Abel reporting.
And be sure to check out the KPBS Voter Hub. It includes explainers on many of the high-profile races and ballot measures. You can find the link on our homepage at kpbs.org. The KPBS Voter Hub is also available in Spanish. The San Diego City Council is looking at budget priorities, and on that list is addressing the housing crisis. Today, council members discussed prioritizing funding for the city's housing instability prevention program. It provides financial aid to low-income households. Our media partner, KGTV, spoke to one recipient who says the program has been a lifesaver for her.
It gives you the opportunity to have hope for the future. We are in a serious situation with not homeless, but so much as housing. You can't build it fast enough. Even if you build it fast enough, only 10% of them become affordable.
Households who qualify for the program receive $250 to $750 a month to help pay for rent. 3 years ago, California passed SB 9. It's a law allowing duplexes on properties otherwise restricted to single-family homes. It also lets homeowners split their lot in two and sell off the excess land, such as a backyard. The goal is to create more affordable starter homes that blend in with the existing neighborhood. KPBS Metro reporter Andrew Bowen says San Diego homeowners are just beginning to cash in.
Jay Blake lives with his wife in a two-bedroom house in North Park, right next to a canyon that's home to a lot of chatty birds. The Blakes liked this home for its privacy. It's set back about 80 feet from the street, leaving a very large front yard.
It is a little bit overgrown, I would say. We have a couple of trees, some shrubs, things like that. The trees have dropped a lot of leaves, obviously.
Blake has never had any use for the yard. In fact, he's had to spend about $5,000 to maintain it. So he started looking into developing the space into new housing.
I had people come out to give me quotes on it. I realized that I didn't necessarily have the resources to do that on my own. And so I did a lot of Google searching about the possibility of other things that I could do with it.
That search eventually led him to the startup Build Casa. The business was founded in 2022 after the passage of SB 9, which allows homeowners like Blake to subdivide their properties and cash out on their unneeded land. Build Casa handles the permitting and finds a buyer or developer to build a duplex on the new lot. Blake was pleasantly surprised when he got the company's offer for his front yard, $250,000.
Both my wife and myself have advanced degrees, which have really been great for us, but we've had student loans that have plagued us since about 2010, and I think a large chunk of this is going to go to paying those off and finally getting those off our backs, honestly.
Fundamentally, what we see is a lack of affordable starter homes for sale, really across the country, but it's hyper-concentrated in California.
Ben Baer is Build Casa's CEO and co-founder. He says SB 9 is too complicated for most homeowners to navigate on their own, and it's not for everyone.
You have to be open to having a new neighbor, and certainly, that's not something that everybody wants. Where we have seen a lot of interest and uptake is particularly among senior citizens who are, house rich and cash poor and want to age in pace and bought their home a long time ago.
Baer says San Diego is an attractive market for SB 9 projects because there's high demand for housing and construction costs are lower than Los Angeles and the Bay Area. It also has a city government that supports SB 9, and that's not the case everywhere. The wealthy Bay Area suburb of Woodside declared its single-family neighborhoods mountain lion habitat in an effort to block SB 9. The move was short-lived, and this year the legislature passed a cleanup bill that closes some of the law's loopholes.
I mean, this was a momentous bill. It was a lot of people coming together to get this signed.
Muhammad Alameldin is a policy associate at the UC Berkeley Turner Center for Housing Innovation. He says SB 9's passage in 2021 was a major political achievement, but a study he co-authored last year found the law's impact on the housing supply has been slow to materialize.
It does take a while for the general public to know about the law, and for planning departments to adjust to state laws and state policies.
Alameldin says the emergence of companies like Build Casa and its competitor Yardsworth shows the market is ironing out the kinks in SB 9, and it's helping bring back competition to the home building industry. After the Great Recession, a lot of contractors switched to house flipping.
Having more developers build housing, especially small-scale housing like this, is very healthy for the housing industry.
I wanted to leave the property in better hands, I suppose.
Jay Blake says he's glad the new housing in his front yard will fit in with the neighborhood, which is already full of duplexes and triplexes, and he's glad someone else is dealing with the permits.
I realize that I might be leaving a little bit of money on the table, and I'm not bothered by that because I don't have to be bothered by all the logistics of property development, I guess.
After paying off their student loans, the Blakes are thinking about using what's left over to add central air to their home, and maybe another solar panel. Andrew Bowen, KPBS News.
Governor Gavin Newsom met with San Diego County leaders today to discuss the ongoing Tijuana River Valley pollution crisis. The governor attended a briefing that included an update on the South Bay International wastewater treatment plant. The facility has been blamed in part for the sewage problems at the border. County leaders say the treatment plant needs more than $150 million in repairs before expansion can be started to treat the pollution.
We have already had a lot of big changes around our area recently. A lot more clouds and even a few sprinkles out there. Of course, the winds still cranking in, so if you're in the mountains or even the desert, you'll find it's a little bit of a blustery time as we continue through tonight. That should ease up tomorrow, also easing up on some of those sprinkles tomorrow, which means it's going to be a cool day as a new storm system kind of sweeps its way, weakening overhead. If you look out there, though, we still have those wind advisors. A lot of these run into the middle of the day tomorrow, so we will still have that concern through tonight into early tomorrow morning. After that, again, those winds should ease at least enough to get rid of the advisory criteria. Tonight's forecast bringing in maybe just a stray shower or two. You can see that possibility. 60, though, for the low in the city as you head towards Borrego Springs, 51 for the low, and Chula Vista coming in at 56 overnight. Here's what happens. We've got this storm system providing some energy throughout the interior west, and we have just enough flow here towards the coast to push on shore. That's going to kick up a couple of stray showers out there. Not a whole lot of activity, though, through tonight and tomorrow morning, waking up pretty dry across our area, and we will keep things quiet as those winds finally ease up for us and bring us more of our usual pattern this time of year. But the numbers will be chilly behind it. We're looking at 69 for San Diego, but look at what happens in Ramona. 67 for the high, and we're back to 75 in Borrego Springs. Mount Laguna only topping out in the 40s. Some of the highest elevations above 5,000 feet, maybe a few snowflakes overnight tonight, but the story is we are going to settle in to this pattern here, going into the 70s for our coastal communities as we go through the upcoming days. If you are in our inland communities, mid-70s do return for us for the middle of the week, but tomorrow, high of just 70 degrees, which means a lot of the day is spent in the 60s, so you'll want to be ready for that. And if that's not enough, those mountain communities staying in the 40s here through a good chunk of the week until we get towards 50 degrees on Friday. Desert communities holding on to the upper 70s by Thursday and Friday, but until then, it's the mid-70s. For KPBS News, I'm meteorologist Melissa Constanzer.
I'm Jeff Bennett. Tonight on the NewsHour, former President Trump faces backlash for his Madison Square Garden rally filled with racist and sexist rhetoric. That's at 7 after Evening Edition on KPBS.
A campaign to help create pathways for community college students to transfer to historically black colleges kicked off in San Diego today. The Caravan made its first of 11 stops at San Diego Mesa College. The program offers any California community college student with a GPA of 2.0 or higher and who also meets completion requirements guaranteed admission to all partner HBCU institutions.
This provides students with the opportunity to expand their capacity about the places that they can transfer, places that they can go to find and follow their purpose. And HBCUs provide a very unique perspective and entry point into education, right? So it's infused with cultural context, historical context. And for students to be able to learn in an environment like that is absolutely incredible.
Some of the universities partnered with the HBCU transfer caravan include Tuskegee, Stillman, and Xavier. Governor Gavin Newsom has pitched a plan that could help keep film and TV production in California. The proposal would more than double the annual tax credit the state offers film and TV producers that shoot in California. Currently, the credit is $330 million, but it would go up to $750 million, which is the largest amount offered by any state except for Georgia. The plan needs to be approved by the state legislature and could take effect next summer. Well, this Halloween, San Diego gets a new one-night-only film festival. KPBS cinema junkie Beth Accomando previews the Halloween Film Festival at Cinema Under the Stars.
Camera is always rolling. This year's inaugural Halloween Film Festival grew out of an event that filmmaker Vic Terry co-hosted.
We did a premiere party for our film Frankie at Cinema Under the Stars, and it was such a cool experience, such a great celebration of art and community. And so we wanted to extend that to showcase the work of other talented artists and continue to build that community and foster those creative connections.
And build it around a Halloween theme, says Terry's partner in crime, Cassidy Bartolome.
Yeah, welcome to Cinema Under the Stars. We've kind of taken it on as our home as we build this independent film community in San Diego. We started taking submissions early this year and whittled it down to 8 independent films, all with Halloween as the forefront and focused on a fun, quirky, and funny side of Halloween.
One of the highlights will be a film from the 1930s called The Scalpel.
Made by Richard Lyford in 1936. He was 19 years old, at the forefront of film and a very creative filmmaker, and that really resonated with Vic and myself.
So the film never was released back in the time that it was created, and Ed Hartman, who is a Seattle-based musician and composer, he went and restored The Scalpel, and he created a new score, the soundtrack that the film never got to have in its day.
So grab a blanket and a zero-gravity lounge chair this Halloween night and curl up under the stars for some scary fun at the Halloween Film Festival. Beth Accomando, KPBS News.
Here's a look at what we're working on for tomorrow in the KPBS newsroom. It's a question on parents' minds this time of year. How much candy is okay for kids to eat on Halloween? NPR's Morning Edition gets answers from pediatricians. And a spooky edition of KPBS Midday Edition diving into the haunted history of 2 famous San Diego landmarks. And you can find tonight's stories on our website, kpbs.org. Thanks for joining us. I'm Maya Trabulsi. Good night.
Major funding for KPBS Evening Edition has been made possible in part by Bill Howe Family of Companies, providing San Diego with plumbing, heating, and air restoration, flood and remodeling services for over 40 years. Call 1-800-BILL-HOWE or visit billhowe.com. And by the Conrad Prebys Foundation, Darlene Marcos Shiley, and by the following: and by viewers like you. Thank you.